We have spent the last 2 decades reading the human genome, but it turns out we were only looking at the index. The hidden cell code that changes medicine forever was just cracked, and it proves we have been looking at human disease entirely wrong. For years, the biological narrative was simple, almost mechanical. Every medical textbook on Earth tells us that your DNA is the master blueprint, and that genes make proteins, and those proteins build your body. When that process breaks down and causes something devastating, like cancer, cystic fibrosis, or Alzheimer's, we assumed it was a random mutation in the core code, a broken gear in the machine. We believed that if we could just map the letters of the human genome, we could find the typos, fix them, and eradicate disease. But as the years passed after the Human Genome Project, we realized something incredibly frustrating. Mapping the letters did not give us the cure. We had the entire dictionary of human biology in our hands, but we had absolutely no idea how to read the grammar. The letters were there, but the instructions on when, where, and how to use those letters were completely invisible to us. Until right now.
So how exactly did an entire biological language remain hidden inside us for this long? It comes down to a massive misunderstanding of what RNA actually does. For decades, science treated RNA as a simple messenger, a biological courier that just carried a copy of your DNA out to the cell to be built. But a massive new study has revealed a hidden secondary syntax operating inside our cells, proving RNA is not just a messenger, it is the architect. Researchers discovered that RNA folds itself into incredibly complex three-dimensional shapes. These shapes act like physical lock and key switches, a literal secondary code embedded inside the genetic sequence that dictates exactly when and where genetic mistakes are actually allowed to happen. It's an intricate layer of biological software that controls the hardware. Finding this hidden syntax is like discovering a backdoor into the human operating system. It means that the vast majority of chronic diseases are not caused by broken genes, but by broken instructions. The genetic code is fine, but the secondary syntax is telling the cell to fold the wrong protein at the wrong time in the wrong place. And that realization completely changes the battleground of modern medicine.
If we finally understand how the cell regulates itself in real time using this secondary language, the obvious question is why we are still trying to permanently slice open our DNA to fix it. Over the last few years, the world has been obsessed with CRISPR and permanent gene editing. We have been treating human biology like a typo that needs to be permanently cut out with molecular scissors. But CRISPR is dangerous. When you permanently alter the core blueprint of a human being, you risk off-target effects. You risk cutting the wrong gene, creating new mutations, and passing those irreversible mistakes down to future generations. But by understanding how this newly discovered secondary code operates, scientists realized they do not need to permanently cut and splice your DNA ever again. Instead, they can just rewrite the temporary RNA instructions. Think of it like a software patch for your computer. Instead of ripping out the hard drive to fix a glitch, you just send an update to the operating system. In recent lab tests, researchers have successfully used this secondary syntax to trick diseased cells into turning off their own destructive behaviors. They intercepted the faulty RNA messages and corrected them on the fly without ever permanently altering the genetic blueprint of the host. What happens when we take this out of the petri dish and put it into a living, breathing human system? The results we are starting to see are absolutely staggering. Because this method doesn't permanently change the genome, it can be used as a targeted transient therapy. If a patient has a tumor that is aggressively growing, doctors don't need to poison the entire body with chemotherapy, and they don't need to permanently edit the patient's immune system. They can simply deploy an RNA therapeutic that speaks this newly discovered syntax. It enters the body, finds the specific cells that are misbehaving, and issues a temporary override command. It tells the cancer cells to stop dividing, or it tells the brain cells to stop producing the toxic plaques associated with Alzheimer's. The therapy does its job, the cells correct their behavior, and then the RNA patch naturally dissolves out of the system without a trace. There are no permanent side effects.
There are no irreversible gene editing risks. It is a clean, hyper-targeted override that essentially teaches your body how to heal itself using its own native programming language.
This forces us to ask the ultimate question about the future of human longevity. If chronic disease is no longer a permanent life sentence, but rather a temporary glitch that can be patched with an RNA update, what happens to the human lifespan? We are standing on the precipice of an era where aging and illness are treated as manageable engineering problems rather than inevitable biological fates. We are no longer limited by the biological hardware we were born with because we have finally learned how to write the software. The darkness of incurable genetic disease is fading. The era of chronic, permanent illness is finally coming to an end. We are witnessing the moment humanity takes conscious control of its own biology.